अवधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Okay, so now we started with this whole culmination of the teaching was what? Lakshyartha of both Tvampada and Tatpada has one resolution point. Okay, so Nandita, since you've explained the whole class, why don't you explain?
I've forgotten.
Okay, so that means between Jiva and Ishvara there is an equation. Okay,
Oh, I can
so
explain.
you can explain. Okay, then do explain.
So the equation, in fact, I wrote it like in the Lakshata, it's not equal. So
X.
Tat is not equal to Tvam.
Vachyartha is not equal,
In Vachyartha,
yeah.
which is your literal meaning.
Yes.
Because Tat refers to Ishwar, who is regarded as somebody that you at that point, because the Tvam is you, which is a Jiva Upadhi at that point.
Okay.
You regard Ishwar as somebody far away from you and not you, which is why there's a difference, and Tat is not equal to Tvam in the literal meaning. Am I right? So far?
Yes.
And in the Lakshata, which is the intended meaning, Tat is equal to Tvam. There's no difference because ultimately they both refer to the Chaitanya Rupa, which is awareness. And yeah, Tat is literally Tat is someone far away as the cause of the universe, and intended Tat is Ishvara awareness, which is everywhere, and which is basically intelligence, laws that govern us, laws of nature like gravity, etc. Then laws of biology, all your physiology, how your respiratory systems work, the infallible laws of dharma, karma, and the laws of psychology.
Very good.
Right? So that is the intended meaning of Tat. And Tvam is the Jiva Upadhi in the literal meaning, and in the intended meaning, again it goes into that whole broader awareness that, which is, as we talked about, that Chaitanya Rupa and yeah, awareness.
See, it's interesting. Two people attend the same class and they all have different take homes, right?
Yeah.
So, anybody wants to comment on what she says?
Tat and the Tvam becomes the equation becomes one because that is when full knowledge is gained and awareness is one.
Exactly.
Right?
Excellent.
In the
Okay.
Vakyartha, there is no connection between you and Ishvara. In the Lakshyartha, the intended meaning is that you and the Ishvara that is manifest in all the universe is the same. Like the wave, the ocean and the water. Without awareness, i.e. water, there is no ocean or wave. There is no Jiva, i.e. wave, or Ishvara, ocean, if there is no awareness.
Excellent. Okay, I think,
And also
yeah.
we talked about
This is
why
very
living
good.
the person is free, who is a wise person, and they become wise because they have learned through Vedanta, and that makes them free. And we talked about Sadguru, and the a guru with the means to acquire this knowledge of Vedanta.
And also that
Yeah.
with all the laws that we govern from the infallible dharma, karma, all that, we have one window to choose, and that's free will.
Excellent. Excellent. So that's why we also shape the universe. We are not just passive observer of the universe. Now, only one slight correction, Nandita. When I talked about the Vachyartha, Vachyartha is what we understand by Ishvara. So that for initially our understanding is that it is something which is far. Then when we refine our understanding and understand that Ishvara includes all the intelligence which is in the creation, it is organizing the universe through all the laws, that all also is within Vachyartha, not Lakshyartha.
Oh really?
Yeah, yeah. Because that means at that level, you, the individual, is not the laws. Right? There is no equation.
Awareness is bifurcated.
Exactly. So awareness is appearing as what? All the laws on one hand, and then one individual which is governed by the laws. So that means awareness, when it is appearing as the organizing principle which organizes the whole universe through series of laws, is what we call Ishvara, which is the Vachyartha, not Lakshyartha. The Lakshyartha is, as what you said, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So that means at the level of Jiva, the individual, and Ishvara, which is all the laws and all the thing, that there is no equation. You don't become, when you say I am Tattvam Asi, that wave does not become ocean. Right? When the wave, enlightened wave, does not become the ocean. Enlightened wave understands that the truth of waveness is water, the truth of oceanness is water. Water is free from both waveness and oceanness. Okay, physically.
Content is the same.
No. Exactly. You're not part. See, there are two.
Part of the ocean.
Yes. But see, there are two levels here, Priya. One is retaining my identity as wave. If I retain my identity as wave, then I'm part of the ocean. But if I switch and if I say that wave is mithya, there is no existence of wave without water. Water, while being wave, is always free from waveness. Then you're not giving more reality to the form, you're giving more reality to the content.
If you understand the content, the form does not matter.
Exactly.
And Brahman is from big.
Exactly.
And nobody
Absolutely.
produces awareness. Awareness
Is the ultimate cause of all the cause. Exactly. Lovely. Okay. So Nandita, that whole understanding of Ishvara, which seems like remote to you, and even if you refine it further, it still is within Vachyartha. Yes? Otherwise, you are perfect.
And so you reach Lakshyata only when
You inquire into the two.
when you also realize.
When only, see, because this is a reality. There is only one awareness which is on one hand organizing the whole universe through series of laws, and on the other hand appearing as one little individual which is governed by the laws. Okay. Now, until the time that you don't know this, what? You are ignorant. When you understand that, what have you done? You have just removed the way. This is already there. It's like that. Okay, so what I'm doing is not producing something new.
So
I'm just making you see what is.
At what point does it become Lakshata? When you move from Jiva Upadhi to understanding?
Excellent. Right? When you move from Jiva Upadhi to the content, okay, and understand that Jiva Upadhi is not there. It is mithya. It has a dependent reality. Same, Ishvara Upadhi, you can't say it's not there. The laws you are governed by, the laws of gravity, you cannot say I'm awareness, I'm not subject to laws of gravity. You try going out, you will fall. Right? So that means Ishvara Upadhi is real. Right? We are not negating Ishvara. Because all the laws which govern my body, laws of physiology, they are not created by me. That this is what we call the intelligence, which organizes not only your body but my body, which is what we call the discipline of physiology, because of which the discipline of physiology exists. Nobody can go away from that. You only can understand it better and intervene intelligently. Yeah?
And one thing, you said then I am Ishvara is the same, right? But you said that never is the case.
So that's why at Vachyartha there is not. The wave does not become physically the ocean.
Right.
So that's why at Vachyartha there is no equation. At Lakshyartha there is equation. At the level of water you can say there is only one. There is no second thing.
So then at the Lakshata level there is only awareness.
Exactly. That, but it still appears as two. Okay, so now let's go a little bit more in the discussion of Jivan Mukta. I'm so happy that you are working at what I'm saying, because for a teacher it's very important to know what's going on in the mind of what you've understood, because otherwise I just talk and I have no idea what you take home, right? So now the next question is Jivan Muktaha Kaha. Okay, who is the person who is free while living? Okay, this is what we have, all these very fancy words for what enlightened person, right? We load these words with some kind of an esoteric connotation. The person is in touch with God, and we have all these romantic ideas about who a wise person is. Okay. Yeah, exactly. A halo, exactly. The person is walking around with a halo or a big beard. Or you have detached from the world. Exactly, right? So this is what we have: enlightened, self-realized, all these different words that we use, which actually seem like something so far away from us, right? The Upanishads and Vedanta, they are very practical. Okay? They only use the word, not self-realization or anything. They use a very simple word. They use Jivan Muktaha. Okay? So that is while living. It's a present participle. Okay? Jivan is living. Okay? So while living, the person is Muktaha. The person is free. Okay? So now he's asking, who is this person while living? The person lives with that freedom. In the very word, it negates what? All our fantasies about who is a wise person. Okay? So that means the person is away from the world. While living, he is right there. Okay? And it's not detached from the world. What is it? The person is free. Where is the freedom lying?
In his mind.
Exactly. From in the mind, from what the person understands. Okay, so therefore it says very nice practical word. While living, the person is free. So what makes that person free while living? That is answered in the next verse. Okay, Yathaha deha aham purusho aham brahmanaha aham shudro aham asmi iti drudha nishchaya tatha na aham brahmanaha na shudraha na purushaha kintu asangaha satchidananda swarupaha prakasha rupaha sarvantaryami chidakasha rupaha asmi iti drudha nishchaya rupaha aparoksha jnanat jivan muktaha. Okay, he explains who is this Jivan Mukta, so that all these romantic ideas go away. He says, just as when we live, what is our orientation of who I am? We say, aham dehaha, okay, that I am as good as the body. This is such a natural orientation of everyone, and such a firm orientation, very deep orientation that everybody has. Okay, so that means deho aham purushoham means gender. I am a male, I am a female, which is what? Dependent upon the characteristic of the body. Okay, brahmano aham shudro aham iti. Okay, what family you're born in. This is how we form our identity. Okay, this brahmana and shudra is one Vedic way of looking at the identity, but now we can replace it with what? The class. You can, this is something that which class are you born in? Okay, how do you, most of the time, whether we explicitly say or not, we always have an image of ourselves. Okay, do I belong to the upper caste, class, or the middle class, or upper middle class, or lower class? This is something, this marketing people, when they have to market a product, okay, they are extremely sophisticated, because they want to know first to who is the target audience for your product. Okay, they study very carefully the characteristic of that target audience, and they will come up with an ad campaign based on who the target market is. So that means it is such a reality. Okay, you belong to a certain class, you hold these values, you have these preferences, you are behaving like this. This is so much inbuilt. We think that ours is a class conscious society. It's, yes, maybe, but every society is class conscious. Different ways. Okay, different ways, but you always, upper class, you go to France, my God, there is such a, the minute you open your mouth and you start speaking French, they know immediately what class you come from. 5 sentences you speak and they know exactly whether you're from Paris or you're from not Paris, whether you're bourgeois or you're not, all this is figured out. Okay, so therefore this class consciousness is something which is inbuilt. A lot of our interactions are governed by where we place that person. When we meet the person, okay, this is something that happens. In every time you have met somebody, right, and when you're getting to know the person, there is nobody who's totally free from it. Somehow you're assessing. You're assessing what is the education background, what is the, does it match mine or not? And whether if it is equal, then it is, a certain relationship can exist. When somebody is placed higher, then you behave differently. When somebody is placed lower, you behave differently. Automatic. Okay, so therefore this is such a deep programming that exists within us. Okay, so we live with these values that I'm this much, I'm the body, okay, and I have this characteristic, then people around me, I belong to this class, then people around me are of this thing. So this is a normal way of interacting with the world. How effortless it is. Okay, so this is what he says, Drudha Nishchaya. Drudha Nishchaya means it's effortless. It's so deeply ingrained, you don't even realize it. So, just as you live almost spontaneously with this value, the wise person lives with what? Opposite. Okay, here he says, Tatha na aham brahmanaha. I'm not, I'm not somebody who is either Brahmana. Brahmana can stand for somebody who is intelligent, who is clear in thinking, who is a good human being, but still all these characteristics, where do they exist?
In your mind.
In the mind. Exactly. So that means it's nice to have a privileged, it's nice to have a cultivated mind, it's nice to have, we are not saying it is bad or anything, please, or you have to be indifferent to it. But basically, you are not as good as your mind. That is crystal clear. You're not as good as, it's like you're not the house does not mean you will be indifferent to the house. You can keep your house well. You're not the car doesn't mean that you just are totally careless about your car. You will keep your car well. But there is no confusion between the relationship that you have with your car and with your house. Similarly, there is no confusion with the relationship that you have with your body. Because the problem with, the minute you think I'm the body, so many problems automatically come. Retaining that error, you cannot have freedom. Why? Because just now she's telling me, Nisha is telling me a story that it's just somebody, right, was traveling from Jodhpur to Mumbai, and 21-year-old, and just disappeared. Disappeared in the sense that it just fell off. Yeah. So therefore, what happens is, imagine if your whole identity is there, what kind of solace will you give? Tell me. What will you tell to the mother? No. How will you solace? Yeah.
Nothing at all, because if you only identify with the body, that's gone.
There is no solution. You can't even begin to say anything. right? So people say, so what? I have this error, so what? Hey, they're huge. There is no way to get out of, okay, certain, from this paradigm, if you look, the minute you make that mistake, you are what? Setting yourself up with, you're caught in that paradigm of which you can't come out, and you cannot stand that paradigm because that paradigm is afflicted with so many problems. Okay, so there is no other way. You have to align your thinking with what is. If you're making a mistake and retaining that mistake, if you want to solve the problem, there is no solution there. Okay, so this is where na aham dehaha is a very important thing. It seems like an abstract kind of a thinking. It's not abstract. It is reality. Okay, so therefore, na aham brahmanaha, na aham shudraha, na purushaha. Okay, who am I? I'm not any of these qualities which is enjoyed, any of the privileges which is enjoyed by this body and mind. Neither I am male or female, which are the characteristics of the body. Okay, then who am I? It says asangaha sat chit ananda swarupaha. Okay, who am I? I am the observer, which is of the nature of awareness, which is, and that awareness is what it says prakasha rupaha. It is awareness because of which you come to know everything in the universe. Imagine, without awareness, will you know anything that exists in the universe?
No.
For you to know existence of time, you need awareness. For you to know existence of space, you need awareness. For you to know any object within time and space, you need awareness. For you to know the condition of the changing conditions of your body, you need awareness. And to know the changing thoughts that take place in your mind, you need awareness. Awareness is something which is, this is why it is not, people say it's light of awareness. People imagine some kind of an extraordinary light which is a halo, right? So that it's not a physical light. It only means awareness because of which you come to know everything in the universe, without which nothing can be known. Don't search for awareness somewhere else. It is because of which you know everything. Okay, so that awareness, he says, is that awareness something which is specific to me? It says sarvantaryami. That awareness is not something which is individualized, it is not confined to the body, it is something which is sarvantaryami. Sarvantaryami means that awareness is equally existing in and through every body. Just like the space is what? Is this glass confining space?
No.
Space is always free. It is something, it seems to be enclosed within this glass. Okay, but it is free. And that space, if you think that this is confining, this glass is confining space, then if from that standpoint, this will feel like what? The second space. If you count like that, how many spaces will you count?
Countless.
Countless. Right? You will count that as a space, you will count that cup space, because this is how the physical appearance is. The physical appearance has some validity. It's not like it's totally your imagination. That's why we make a mistake, universal mistake, because it has some basis.
So the immediate meaning of that, if you looked at this, of space, would be contained within.
It seems like, but the real meaning as a result of the teaching Right? This is why you say this is a Jivan Mukta. Jivan Mukta, you don't just become Jivan Mukta. You need to expose yourself to this teaching which will make you see your true nature. It has a methodology to make you see who you are. And it's highly sophisticated methodology. It's not blah blah blah, oh you are everything, and it's not like that. It's not loose thinking.
So it's not correct then to say that the awareness is within you.
Not
We
at all.
heard this sentence, so it's not exactly
No,
correct.
it
to
is.
say that the
It
awareness
is excellent. It's everywhere. It's all pervading. Okay, it's within you, of course. If it is all pervading, it's everywhere. Exactly, right? So you can't say that the space is not here. The space is inside and outside. It is all pervading. In fact, there is no division in space at all. There is no inside and outside. What is all? So you have to explain this.
Treat together.
Oh, there's some solidarity there. Yeah.
Manish is kicking me at the back. Manya, please kick me.
Right? So this is where it says you need to take out the sense of I from what? One individual form. As long as you think that you are awareness, but you are still what? You are not the body and mind. You are awareness, but you are still confined within given body and mind. You are still highly restricting it. Right? So here he says Sarvantaryami. That awareness is pervading everything. Okay? And that is what Chidakasha Rupaha. Just if you don't understand, he gives this example. It's in form of like a space which has no boundaries, which is not divided by any object that exists in space. Similarly, awareness is not confined to any form. It is in and through every form, undivided. Okay? So this is what he says. That is Dhrida Nishchayaha. Dhrida Nishchaya means very well ascertained knowledge. It's not that there is some vagueness, there is no ambiguity. It's not like when somebody asks you a question and then you get lost, then you don't know how to answer that question. Many people, this is a very common thing, right? People say, yeah, I understand when you talk in Vedanta, but when I go out there, right, and I try to explain to somebody, I get totally stuck.
Yeah, but not only that, you can't verbalize it and you know what you feel, what you're saying.
Yeah.
Practice it.
I can't
So-
articulate it back to them.
So, see, Sapna, one thing is, how is this cup going to practice that space is free?
By seeing the space all around it as well.
Exactly.
Instead of practicing, you just have to be it.
Exactly. Right? You need to understand this is how things are. When you understand this is how things are, then your whole being, right? It is like your whole being undergoes a very major shift in your what? In your whole perception. Perception of things. Okay? Just to give you in a different way, I give an example. Okay? The example is that of Albert Einstein. Okay? He wrote a beautiful, he said that, he wrote in his own words. He says that this world is nothing but one grand consciousness, and we create artificial boundary and we confine that consciousness to only this much, and we live our whole life being imprisoned by this imaginary boundary that we have created. This is Albert Einstein. Okay? This is exactly, what he talks about is really Vedanta. Something which is limitless, you think it's only this much, and your whole life is lived giving that a reality. What kind of life it is going to be? Extremely skewed. Imagine that you are standing in front of a mirror, which is a concave or a convex mirror. Okay? So that means your perception from the beginning is what? Skewed. Right? From the beginning it is skewed. then you try to correct that skewed vision, but that skewed vision is something which itself has no reality. We play with shadows. What is the first thing you have to do? You have to first have a mirror which is what? Showing you the reality of yourself accurately. Then you do what needs to be done. Without that, that is a first step. We live in a world with a highly distorted vision of who we are. Within that, we have all kinds of suffering, and we want to correct that suffering. We want to get rid of this suffering, retaining the distorted view. Because we are so comfortable with that distorted view of ourselves being only this individual. It seems like an abstract teaching. Vedanta seems like an abstract teaching. Oh, if I'm not the body, then what do I have to do?
No, but like what if you bring it down to, say, a real, say I have a body that is cancerous.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
So today I will define myself as a person who's unwell, who needs help.
Absolutely.
Who needs chemotherapy or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Huh? How will it help me as a cancer patient to understand that I'm not limited by my...
Yeah, exactly. So that means Vedanta works at two levels. Very good question. Okay. One is this fundamental relationship that you have with your body, you have to correct. Because imagine you think that I am...
My cancer.
It's my... Yeah. Or you say, I have this body with which I have a special relationship and it has this problem, let me deal with it. That itself, one second, that helps in your perspective. Any problem that you have, if you're totally caught in that problem, you create a, exactly. Okay, so that means absolutely you standing.
That's all I am. My body is only cancerous, right? Then you give yourself no other dimensions to move away from only
your whole
that thing
self-image.
and seeing other stuff.
It is
But does
same
that
like
help?
1 minute. So right, it's like, you know, that let's say your body, most of the people nowadays, they suffer from feeling fat, right? So that means your whole attention is all your body and its fatness. Okay, wherever you go, you all the time, right? You watch everybody and say, I'm fat, I can't. The whole thing, inner message is constantly like that. Okay. Now with this, there are you just keep on adding complexes within complexes within complexes, right? When you say, then because your whole identity is that. Okay. When you move and said, yeah, this is one of the things that I need to take care of, you have a much healthier relationship with what you have to do. Because you're not totally caught with it. Okay, you've not made it into some big Frankenstein, you know, which is.
I am a fat person.
Exactly.
That's the only thing I am.
Absolutely, right? So that means you. It's not that you negate that thing, but you put it in perspective. When anything in life you put in perspective, your capacity to deal with it objectively is increasing manifold. Okay, because if you have not put it in perspective, it will totally occupy whole of you, and you lose.
Or if you put it in a toxic perspective.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Continuously infects you all the time.
You will increase that load that you carry within you. Okay, so you need to have, life is all about proper perspective. Okay, the second thing is, yeah, that I will give that example because it's a very important example that I will give. The second thing is that even though what we saw, okay, one thing is this, yes, I'm awareness, but this body and this mind that I have is what?
Governed by the laws.
Exactly.
If you have to die, you will die.
No, but not only that. It is governed by laws. That means that you can help yourself to what? Physiological laws. Who knows physiological laws? Doctor. Right? So you go and you treat yourself with a doctor. That means, and the doctor will be better able to treat you if you're not carrying the added burden of your sickness. This is what we call psychosomatic. A lot of it is psychosomatic, right? That means even your capacity to recover will be much better if you have a better perspective.
And you know that something has gone in balance to create that.
Exactly. So you take care of that. Okay, so that means that's a very good point, Saloni. When we talk about the world being mithya, we don't mean that the world is just kind of a illusion. We don't mean that the world is false. We don't mean that the world is unreal. Okay, we say that it has a dependent reality. Very sane way of looking at it. Very sane way of looking at it, because neither you can deny the presence of the table, nor you can give it an absolute reality. The table is there. Okay, but if I take away the wood, what will remain as table? So it has a dependent reality on the wood. You have to understand that.
On the wood or on your perception?
No, not on your perception, on the wood. You take out the wood and there is no, right? So that means even though everything is mithya, it is not random.
So is wood mithya at some level also?
Even wood is mithya. Exactly. Okay? Even wood is mithya because it depends upon what tree. Okay? The tree is mithya because exactly. Right? The whole world is mithya. There is only one satyam. And what is that satyam? Awareness. The whole world collapses. It is there, but it is not totally there. It has this in-between reality. Okay? So therefore, and that is what even a quantum physicist, he will tell you exactly that. The only thing he will not know is what is the building block of the universe. Okay? So therefore, this is something, while it is there, it is what? Forms within forms, within forms, within forms. And what is the resolution point?
So your 5 elements that makes up everything, that is also mithya?
Exactly. So that means if you remember Tattva Bodha, it says everything here is nothing but different permutation and combination of 5 elements. Okay? And where is the origin of these 5 elements? It says what? Brahma, Ashraya, yeah, exactly. There is Maya, and that is that capacity to project. That awareness has a capacity to project. That projection is called what? Maya. And that has what? 2 capacities to bring about the whole universe, manifest the whole universe. Okay, it's good Mitali told me, because when I use the word, the Sanskrit word is Vikshepa. Vikshepa means the capacity to manifest. Okay, then we use the word project, but as she pointed out very rightly, when you use the word project, in psychological terms, it means when there is it's not real and you see something, it is called projection. Okay? So we are not using the word in terms of something which is unreal and we see it. We are not using it in that way. We are using it in a way of manifestation. Okay? 5 elements first become manifest and they organize themselves to create this whole universe. Okay? And there, this is what we said, and within this universe, when every form is living in the universe, do they know that everything is just nothing but one awareness? And from awareness comes what? It has a projecting capacity, it has a capacity to manifest, and initially there are 5 elements, and then the whole universe is nothing but different permutations and combinations of 5 elements. Do people know that? No. So this is why we say there is a veil. What is the job that we are doing? From the time that you go to school to now, you have only been removing your veils. When you go and study physics, the physical universe is already set up. It doesn't depend upon your knowledge of physics. The stars are already there. The planets are already there. The galaxies are already organized. Nobody needs your knowledge to organize them. It's already there. What are you doing? You're only,
what is there.
exactly, you're understanding what is there. And it is so complex, you need very intricate mathematical equations to understand how planets are placed. You can spend a lifetime knowing it. And what you're doing is you're not creating, you're only removing your veil. Okay? So therefore, even this knowledge is what? You're removing one essential veil about who you are. Because you keep on removing veils about things in the world, but you have no way to remove the veil about who you are. What is your essential nature? So you remove the veil, without which you are caught in an extremely limited paradigm. Okay? But that does not mean that because the world is mithya, it does not mean that you have to disregard it. As Saloni says, as Nandita says, how does it help me to live my life better? Because it also shows you that this mithya world is not a random world. It's organized through series of laws. So you need to understand how it is organized. Okay? What did we see? What connects you and me? Series of laws. What are those laws?
Karma, dharma,
Karma, dharma, but these are not. Huh?
free choice.
Yeah, that's true. Starting from something very, very basic, there are physical laws which connect us. There are biological laws which connect us. There are what? Physiological laws which connect us. There are psychological laws which connect us. Okay? So that means if you want to live intelligently, you have to recognize the presence of these laws. You have to understand how mithya world is organized. Because you can't just treat mithya world as something which is transient, which has a dependent reality, therefore you should not pay attention to it. It's not. Because all your decision making, all the choices that you have to make about taking care of your body or taking care of somebody else who's sick, whatever it is, your business, everything is done there in mithya world. So you need to know how mithya world works.
No, Nima, this is actually really hard to understand. To sort of not understand, implement.
Yeah.
So it's, yes, you can understand that you mean this as dependent and mithya and maya and all that you can understand sort of more at an intellectual level. But
Yeah.
to implement it and you say to understand how mithya works and how it applies in your life, how
Yeah, so that's
really
why.
hard.
Why is it hard? Because there are laws, right? How can you then say that everything that you're doing is actually really understanding mithya world? You've gone to school and you studied whatever you have studied. What knowledge have you got? Whatever knowledge that you've got, it's all studying mithya world only. How is it organized? When you go to a medical school, what are you seeing? How is a physical body organized? Did any one of us create this? It follows certain laws.
No, that's fine. But
So that means,
how do you then say, for example,
so
how
yes,
do you then
exactly. So
actually think of it in those terms?
you can think of it as in those terms because your body that you have a special relationship with, right? It follows certain laws. So if something is out of place, what do? You fix it. Exactly. Because what happens is, if you carry the mistake of I am as good as the body, and if something happens to the body, then you load the body's problem onto a much bigger problem. So that means your capacity to just put it in its perspective and deal with it objectively is hampered.
So this is a physical example. How
Yeah.
about if you look at something that's say like a difficult relationship or something
Yeah.
like that? Then how do you say that this is all mithya and it's not going to bother me?
No, when did I? Okay, I will. Yeah, I will say. See, that this is exact. That's what I say. That's it. Nandita, you're not listening. See, what I said is, you cannot just dismiss mithya world and say, oh, this is all mithya. This is exactly what I'm saying. You need to understand mithya world to be able to what? Intervene intelligently.
And therefore not create more karma.
Exactly. Right? So that means we are not saying to just use everything, this relationship is all mithya, therefore let me. This is not at all what I'm saying.
No, I understand.
Right?
but I think how
So
to
that
get-
means that there is a psychological law you need to understand, which governs your relationship with my relationship. Nobody can transgress psychological laws. So that means you have to look for a solution incorporating laws of psychology. You need to understand yourself, where you're coming from, and you also need to understand where the other person is coming from. Okay? That is going to give you the proper understanding of the totality of situation. Generally what happens is we are so caught in our own perspective of what is going on in a relationship. Okay? So that means you view it only from your standpoint. And you're so convinced about this is what the reality is, and the other person is so convinced about what they think is right, there is no meeting point. So that means you need to understand the totality of situation. When you begin to understand that the whole universe is organized through series of laws, when you have relational problems, what is it that you need to understand? You have to evoke which laws? Laws of psychology. And within that, understand your behavior and understand somebody else's behavior. Okay? And then you need to resolve that. That means you cannot, the laws define the whole complex web of something which connects you to me. If you are ignorant of that web which connects you to me, and if you don't incorporate that web in your decision making is going to be highly faulty. Okay? Now, I will tell what I just told Tushna, which is a very important thing. You must know. Okay?
One second, just one
Yeah.
second. Before that, I want to ask you, in one of your earlier classes,
Yes.
you had said also, it depends on your perspective, right? Whether it's a wave, whether it's water. So also that would govern that total understanding or partial understanding
True.
or what you see.
Yes, exactly.
Like in a cancer thing, for example, there is a whole school of thought. It's a toxic environment that allows your own immune system to work against you, right? Because it's an autoimmune disorder. So now if you say, oh, I have cancer, I need chemotherapy, and that's the beginning and end of the story, then that's a limited person. But if you say, okay, the toxic environment has been created maybe by my toxic view of myself, or not outside but within this thing, then you also get that perspective and power to change that, change that view or change that input so that it's not toxic anymore.
What Tushna is saying is absolutely right. In fact, recently somebody gave us series of videos, right? Series of videos on cancer. And the whole our orientation is that these cells are growing at an abnormal rate or whatever. That is exactly that. Then you just treat it or you try to kill through chemotherapy. And then the whole thing is that a lot of these cancers are created through your psychology, right? Which is giving wrong messages to your body. Okay? And therefore, there are series of videos. You saw the videos. I didn't see, but I saw. So what it says is, in order to really cure cancer holistically, of course you need to do that because there are some physiological things that you need to take care of. But in addition to that, that video said, it's a Western video. Okay, you need to take care of your emotional life, and you need to take care of your spiritual. Nutrition and your spiritual connection. Western videos on cancer.
Again, what they said was that according to the laws, like what our body is meant to have and eat
as far as the nutrition goes, and the environment and state of mind, we put toxins into our body with stress and negative emotion and wrong food, and cancer is nothing but the result of that, according to these figures. So you have to go back and treat yourself, like you said, any negative image you have of yourself. So there's a story about Anita Moorjani, who actually had a out-of-body experience, and then she realized that she had seen herself in a certain way and cured that attitude of herself, how she viewed herself, and cured herself. And there's all these people who cured themselves completely of what stage cancer with changing just diet.
So I don't know about it, but what I'm saying, it has a significant role to play, right? It's not, this whole thing about psychosomatic is what your mind affects your body. It's not like you just see the physical thing and then you just cure it, right? So how you look at it, what is the perspective you have, enables you to have a right, a right approach to the whole thing. Okay? So that is something which is very critical to living a healthy life. The other thing which I just mentioned to Tushna, which is a very thing that you must know. Okay? In January, there was this psychiatrist who came to our retreat in Anaikatti, and he, after listening to Gita, he said that he knows the brain, right? He knows the brain very well. So he says it is an amazingly profound teaching, because he says that the psychiatrist, they map the physical brain. Okay, so they know exactly where is the center where all your instincts are there, which you share with all the other animals, right? So that means what? Instinct of survival. Okay, then you have the food needs, then you have shelter, basic shelter. Okay, then what? The procreating. All these things you share with every other living being. That is what we call a physical center in your brain, which is what we call the instincts. Okay? Then he says, instincts. Okay? Then there is a second center of the brain, which is what we call cortex. Okay? This cortex is where all the reasoning takes place. Okay, so that means when you go to school and you learn things, you learn basic logic, you learn different subject matters. So then what is our tendency? Generally you go to physics, you come to know there is so much more to know. So that means from from primary school you go to secondary school, then you go to undergraduate, then graduate school, then PhD, and then still you feel I don't know everything, right? So that means you just know more and more and more of a given thing. Okay, this is what we call analytical mind. This is how we generally learn. We become scholars, we become genius. This is what we call, this mind is what we call cortex. That is the center where all the very sophisticated understanding takes place. But there is another part, he says, is neocortex. That particular way of looking at things, you can be a genius looking into quantum physics and you still may be emotionally what?
Compromised.
Yeah.
Highly. You find very successful people sometimes what? With reference to the vision of the world they have, they are like children. Okay? Highly self-centered. Sometimes those are the people, because they are so driven, they get ahead very much, because they are just so narrow, they are so focused, and everything else gets compromised. So on one hand, this person is highly successful, but on the other hand, in terms of the vision or the overall growth of that person, the person is lacking. Okay? So therefore, we only know how to operate from what? This instinct and cortex. He says any spiritual teaching which is making you not go into an imaginary mode of colors and auras and this and that, not that. Okay? But making you examine the reality and giving you different perspective is something which is developing your neocortex. Okay? Neocortex is a center of the brain which enables you to answer certain questions about who am I? What is my relationship with the universe? What is the cause of the universe? What's my relationship with it? These are so fundamental, and to have a proper perspective to life, you can't ignore these questions. When you have helped yourself to what? Develop this neocortex, then when situations arise, before what did we have with us? Only two areas of our mind, instinct and cortex. Now you're equipped with another set of wisdom which is going to guide your decision making. You see the situation from a much bigger perspective, in much more in totality, not carried away with your little understanding and your little vision of the world. This is a huge thing. It will influence every decision that you make. Which decision of yours will not be influenced by this data that you make an effort to develop? Okay. This is what we call food for your soul. If you ignore that, in spite of all the achievements, there is this emptiness. Nobody can take away that emptiness, that non-fulfillment, that feeling of lack. This is why when people come to Vedanta, it touches them at a very, very deep level, unless they have their own blocks. If they have blocks, nobody can penetrate. But if you're open and if you're just interested in reality, it can just pierce through and touch the very essential core of your being. And nothing else can touch the way it touches. Because it's just understanding the overall meaning of your life, without which we are just what? In clouds. We have no idea why we are here, what are we doing here, where we will go. We have just clueless, just everybody is doing something and so busy going from one thing to the other. And you do the same. And then one day their life ends. What is this?
It's like a robot who is probably programmed.
Programmed, absolutely. So this is something so fundamental. So fundamental. If you have this, does it mean that your cortex brain is going to not work and your instinct brain is not going to work? It is going to work, but it is so much better equipped with a much better perspective. It's not against, right? When you develop neocortex, it is not against your instinct, it is not against your cortex, it embellishes it far more and makes it much bigger and much more holistic and much more alive to real position that you have in life and not your imaginary status of what you are.
I asked her a question. I said, based on what Vedanta said, how do you, like pain, for example, you're saying in a difficult relationship, or something like Nisha said the story of this mother-in-law, so only child. She said, you can't offer solace and say it didn't happen or it's okay or anything like that. Right? She said that just now in my lesson. And only that neocortex then in a process, right, offers you that option, right, of seeing what happened in a different perspective that would perhaps allow you to heal. Or at least allowing the thought to come in. And this is why, like the grieving, it's such a long process, because you have to go through that initial feeling of loss and all, which is the mithya, right? That is the feeling of loss
and that follows
and all that, and then only can you move into, I think, what you were saying of that
process of grieving process. By equipping yourself with a different vision will become smaller. Okay, but it still will continue because it follows the laws of emotions. Nobody can bypass laws of emotions. This is why.
If you lose someone like that, the story Monisha was saying, or even someone really close to you, like a parent or whatever. I understand what you said, Krishna said it helps you with the process, but on a daily life when you're living, you want to just
pick up the phone and talk, you want to see the person. That is what life is about. So having that at the back of my mind, yeah, that awareness, like he hasn't gone, the body is gone, but I mean it's not.
No, but
It's
that's
not
not what she's
comforting
saying.
at an everyday level, if you understand.
I think what she's
See.
saying is to accept it, we all understand the thing,
Yeah.
but to actually put it into practice is probably very difficult, which I think it is.
But this is where I say that when you, the very expectation, one thing you have to be very careful as to what are you expecting, right? You expect that as a result of what? Losing of somebody very, very close to you, with this spiritual knowledge, you will not feel anything. That is ridiculous. That very expectation goes in that you don't understand the law of emotions. This is why I say that the whole spirituality is mithya world. You can't avoid emotions. The very fact that you think that the spirituality will enable you to bypass emotions itself is a wrong starting point. It will only enable you to better manage your emotions.
Or not keep swirling in
Exactly,
the
in that particular
When
thing
you move
which
on,
is exactly. So that means that there are two individuals, they may have gone through a very significant loss. Two individuals. Okay, one is completely caught in this bitterness. Grieving is necessary. Grieving you cannot avoid. Okay? Grieving, if you avoid, you will end up with problems. Okay? So that means you have to understand that this mithya world follows emotional order. Emotional order means loss of somebody close will lead to pain. This is what we call emotional order. Don't try to what? Bypass this emotional order, because you're within that order. By spirituality, we are not trying to bypass emotional order. We are trying to understand that order, give ourselves some time to grieve instead of shoving our emotions. Okay? Because if you don't address your emotions, then the very emotional order will lead to other problems, other disorder. Okay? What happens is, like I had a situation of loss. Parents lost their 19-year-old boy. Okay? And he was studying in Banaras Hindu University. And what happened is, he had gone somewhere, and he, in those days, I don't know, he contacted something and he died. Okay? Now, both parents are totally shocked. Okay? And what can you tell those parents? Tell me. And once after he passed away, this son came first in his engineering thing that he was studying. So therefore, if you say by spirituality, I will not feel the emotion of sadness, that is what? That is, doesn't exist. Okay? If you try, because that is what we call the coping mechanism. Okay? So that means they had other children. So in order not to influence other children very much, what the father put up this whole thing of not expressing the emotion. In few years, the father became diabetic. This is what we talk about order. If you don't give right expression to your feelings, right, it will have some other repercussions. You can't avoid it. So what is a wise thing to do? The wise thing to do is what? You're working within laws. The minute you understand that emotional laws are there, you will grieve. You will not resist that grieving. When you allow that thing to happen, in that there is a great release. Because the very expectation that things will not happen that way itself is a wrong starting point. It shows that you are oblivious to this order. Having grieved, then you can say, am I going to spend rest of my life only on grieving, or am I going to spend now some, this, my skills, my abilities to do something constructive? Okay? Then what they did, they became the authors of some amazing books. They started writing books, became scholars, Sanskrit scholars. Okay, so that means after grieving for the husband became diabetic, the wife had so much sorrow, but instead of being drowned in the sorrow and feeling victim for rest of her life, she started expressing it through her writing. She became one of the very famous poets in Gujarat. This is what we mean by not bypassing the order but navigating your life elegantly, understanding how it is. Life is like a river. Either you can try to go against the flow, and you don't understand where it flows, you don't understand the rules, or you are totally oblivious to the major flow and you are just doing your own thing, sidelined totally. Or you can be intelligent and you can place yourself at the right point where the river will take you forward. But that positioning you have to do. Use your free will, well-developed cortex, intelligent interventions. If you try to resist laws, you are You are not going to gain anything. If you try to disregard the laws, say that they don't exist, or bypass laws, you're again But if you try to understand how it operates and then live intelligently, this is with the right perspective, this is what we call successful living. Successful living requires you to understand the world around you. You can't just say, whatever. It's not whatever. With all your wrong understanding, when somebody is correcting it, you see no relevance of that correction, which is such a fundamental correction. There is something, it's such an important fundamental correction, without which everything is insignificant. Okay? So therefore, this is Jivan Mukta. But I wanted to finish this, but it's good. It's very good that you're thinking about things, and it's very, very important that you understand that there are two aspects of Vedanta. One is what we call Brahma Vidya, and the other one is what we call Yoga Shastra. Brahma Vidya is understanding the reality, okay, which is much bigger than what you think it is. Okay. The other part is Yoga Shastra, your personal growth, because your whole life is governed by the past values and past understanding you had about the world, which was highly incomplete. Okay. With that incomplete knowledge, it is inevitable that you have complexes, or everybody has, not you or me or what, everybody has. Okay, and orientations which are highly self-defeating in nature. Anything, anger that you're holding on to, sadness that you're holding on to, general depression, frustration, anxiety, all this is based on your past wrong understanding of realities. You think when you understand realities more accurately, all this is going to disappear in one day? No. It has its what we call psychological order. You need to look into what are the assumptions which I have implicit in all these baggages that I am carrying. What is it which needs correction? That time you need to spend with yourself. Because only your baggages are only yours. They are not somebody else's. Everybody's orientations are everybody else's they're unique to them. They need to spend time with them and correct them. Okay? So that is what we call Brahma Vidya and Yoga Shastra. Yoga Shastra is a huge pursuit. For that Yoga Shastra, you need to understand how Mithya world operates. You need to understand the laws within which you live. And you need to navigate your life intelligently. Both. Okay. When both of them are all aligned, this is what Jivan Mukta is. The whole process is done. Understand the reality and free the mind from the habitual past thinking. It's no longer prisoner to this habitual behaviors, habitual way of looking at things. Becomes deliberate. Okay. That alignment, when that happens, there is a total clarity in living. There is no confusion, there is no vagueness, there is no ambiguity, there is not mixing up of ideas. Oh, I'm Brahman, oh, the world is Mithya. These are very, very dangerous ideas. And it's very good that you realize that this is not how Vedanta Shastra is meant to operate. To just be negligent about the world. We don't give these messages. This is why we don't give messages of detachment, no emotions. We don't give these messages. They are very dangerous messages. Desirelessness, very dangerous messages. Okay. You have to be far more nuanced and subtle in understanding realities. You have to be subtle-minded, fine mind, to cultivate that. Clear thinking. Proper perspective. Totality. This is what is needed. So this is why there is a bridging gap between. That's why I say it's not only a philosophical pursuit, it's a spiritual pursuit. It's not just understanding the realities of what is Ishvara and all. It is what, as result of that understanding, how I do things differently. How I interact with the world with a certain composure. That's why it's philosophical as well as spiritual pursuit. So now my real thing got nothing. I didn't even do. I think I did one verse, but I wanted to finish it, and I could not finish it. Okay, so I'll stop with a prayer. Then we can decide what to do. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyat Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.